The concrete in direct summer sun hits 140 degrees. Not an estimate. That's what a thermometer reads off asphalt in July when you're deciding where to lay down. In June 2024, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that a city can legally take your bedding, fine you $295 for having it, and charge you with criminal trespass if you come back. 6-3, highest court in the country. What they banned costs $20 to build, uses physics from a NASA program that protected astronauts in the vacuum of space, and keeps you 15 to 35 degrees cooler than the air outside. No electricity, no battery, no monthly bill. This is that shelter. And before we're done today, I'm going to show you an $8 add-on the United Nations has been teaching in Africa for 20 years that keeps your water cold inside it. Stay with me. If heat is the thing that's beating you this summer, do yourself a favor and subscribe. This is the channel that keeps you cool, safe, and one step ahead without a power bill. I spent more winters than I'll admit in vehicles and places you wouldn't stop your car. I know what it feels like when the ground is the only thing under you and nowhere else exists. I got back on my feet, but I didn't forget what worked out there. I'm here to pass it on. That's the whole thing. Let me tell you what most people reach for first. They go out and buy a tent. Makes sense. Tents are what you're supposed to have when you're sleeping outside. Camping stores sell them, emergency kits include them, and the whole word shelter makes a tent feel like the answer. I understand that logic. But here's what happens to a standard tent in July in direct sun. The nylon absorbs heat. The interior becomes a greenhouse. We're talking 10 to 20 degrees hotter than the air outside. People cook in those things. Any desert camper will tell you the same. A dark or mid-tone nylon tent in full sun has a solar absorptance somewhere around 40 to 60%. That means it's soaking up more than half the radiation coming off the sun and converting it into heat right above your head. The portable AC option isn't much better. The Air evaporative cooler at Home Depot runs $150, requires a 115-volt outlet, useless without grid power. The Medea 5000 BTU portable unit at Walmart is $250. Same problem, requires a window exhaust. If you're in a vehicle, forget it. And a quality reflective camping tent, the kind actually designed for heat, runs $100 to $350. Still absorbs far more solar radiation than what I'm about to describe. Here's the honest part though. Tents work fine at night. When the sun's down and wind is the enemy, a standard tent earns its keep. I'm not saying throw yours away. I'm saying it's the wrong tool for one specific problem. Daytime radiant heat in direct sun is its own thing. It needs its own answer. The sun's heat doesn't warm air the way your furnace does. It travels as radiation, electromagnetic waves, same family as visible light, just longer wavelength. It moves through air without heating the air. It only becomes heat when it hits something and gets absorbed. That is the whole secret. Think about two cars in the same parking lot, same blazing afternoon, same air temperature outside. The black car's interior hits 172 degrees. The white car's interior hits 120. Same sun, same time of day, 52 degrees of difference from color alone. And Mylar, the aluminized film on an emergency blanket, reflects 15 times more solar radiation than white paint. Its solar reflectance runs 90 to 97%. Where a dark tarp surface reaches 150 degrees in the sun, the surface of that emergency blanket stays close to ambient air temperature. Because it's not absorbing, it's deflecting. The sun's heat bounces away before it can enter the shelter at all. The sun can't heat what it can't touch. That's principle one. Then there's the ground. Nobody talks about the ground. Asphalt in direct summer sun hits 130 to 158 degrees. Concrete runs 115 to 140. Contact burns begin above 111 degrees. When a person is lying on summer pavement, they are in contact with a heat source that rivals the inside of an oven. Cutting that contact isn't a comfort issue. It's medicine. And the third piece, still air. It is one of the laziest conductors of heat in the physical world. Thermal conductivity of 0.006 watts per meter Kelvin. Steel moves heat at 50 watts per meter Kelvin, nearly 2,000 times faster. An inch of still air isn't impressive alone. but combined with an outer surface that's already reflected 90% of the radiation away, it doesn't need to be impressive. Two principles run this entire build. Still air is the cheapest insulator on Earth, and the sun can't heat what it can't touch. Now, let me walk you through the actual shelter. The outer shell is aluminized mylar, emergency blankets, the crinkly silver things in every first aid kit. 4 of them run $5 to $8 on Amazon. Dollar Tree sells them individually for $1. You can also get a pre-made aluminized reflective tarp, 5 by 7 feet for $8 to $15. That's your roof and your walls. Silver goes out, always out facing the sun. I've seen people flip it, thinking the reflective surface should face inward toward them. That's backwards. You want the radiation bounced back before it ever enters the structure. Set it up as a lean-to or A-frame, low to the ground, not a vertical box. A low shape means less surface area in direct sun and less resistance to wind. You don't need poles. 2 sticks, a length of paracord, and a few zip ties from Dollar Tree. Cardboard forms the ribs, the skeleton that holds the mylar away from the inner layer and keeps that gap open. That gap is the second component, 1 to 2 inches of dead air between the outer mylar shell and anything inside. Maintained by cardboard ribs, rolled newspaper, sticks, whatever you have. The R value of still air is about R0.9 per inch, which sounds modest until you remember the outer layer already stopped most of the radiation before the air ever had to work. The gap's job is to block what little remains. Same principle as a thermos, same as double-pane windows, same as the space between your walls, which are not filled with metal because metal conducts heat 50 times faster than air. Your walls are full of nothing. That nothing is doing the work. The third component is the ground barrier. This one matters more than any other single piece. I want to be direct about that. A closed-cell foam sleeping pad. Walmart's Ozark Trail version runs $8 to $12, breaks the conductive link between your body and whatever the earth is cooking underneath you. The R value on a 3/4 inch closed-cell foam pad sits between R2.5 and R4. That's enough. If you cannot get the foam pad, 3 layers of corrugated cardboard gives you R1.5 to R2 and costs nothing. Every grocery store and liquor store has cardboard. Ask at the loading dock. They're usually glad to have someone take it. Now, let me tell you about a detail almost nobody mentions when they describe a shelter like this. It will protect you more reliably than any other single thing I'm going to say today. Ventilation. The shelter needs 2 openings, a gap along the base perimeter, minimum 2 inches all around, and a screened opening at the peak. Hot air rises. If you give it a way out at the top and a way in at the bottom, you get natural airflow without a fan, the stack effect. Your body heat and exhaled CO2 exit through the top. Cooler air draws in from below. And if you hang a wet cloth or a cut piece of t-shirt over that bottom opening, in dry climates below 60% humidity, the air passing through drops another 10 to 15 degrees through evaporative cooling. Same principle as sweating. Your body understood this long before anyone built a shelter. In humid climates, Houston, Atlanta, New Orleans, the wet cloth adds maybe 2 to 4 degrees. Not much, but the ventilation itself is mandatory regardless of where you are. We will come back to why in a few minutes. It is not optional. Notice what every piece of this has in common. There's no electricity, no mechanical system, nothing to run out of power or break. Still air is the cheapest insulator on Earth, and the sun can't heat what it can't touch. Your grandparents didn't call it physics. They called it keeping the curtains drawn and the windows cracked. Same knowledge, different materials. The combined system, mylar shell, dead air gap, foam pad, ventilation, drops interior temperature by 15 to 20 degrees compared to ambient outside in direct sun. In a dry climate with the wet cloth inlet, add another 10 to 15 on top of that. If it's 105 degrees outside in Phoenix and you're in this shelter with a wet cloth over the inlet, you're looking at 70 to 80 degrees inside. That is survivable. That is the difference between a hard afternoon and a medical emergency. On a 115-degree day in Arizona, the system still helps. 15 degrees cooler puts you at 100 inside, but that's not comfortable. And I'm going to tell you exactly what to do in that situation. In humid climates, count on 15 to 20 degrees, not 35. That's still 15 you didn't have before. The full materials list: 4 emergency Mylar blankets, $48. An aluminized reflective tarp if you want more coverage, $8 to $15. Cardboard for structure, free. Closed cell foam sleeping pad, $8 to $12. 25 feet of paracord, $3 to $5. A 10-pack of zip ties from Dollar Tree, $1. Duct tape, $1. Total, $25 to $42 for the full build. Budget version with cardboard on the ground instead of the foam pad, $13 to $24. The commercial product this beats, the Hessair evaporative cooler, runs $149 and requires a power outlet that most people sleeping outside do not have. The build beats it for $20. Let me tell you about June 2021. A heat dome settled over the Pacific Northwest. Portland hit 116 degrees. Seattle hit 108. These are cities built for rain, built for gray and damp and mild, and they were completely unprepared. When it was over, Oregon alone had documented 116 heat-related deaths in a single week. Washington State recorded 196. British Columbia lost 619 people in 5 days. The Oregon Health Authority went back and studied who died and where. 91% of Oregon's heat deaths happened in homes, not in tents, not on sidewalks, in houses without air conditioning, elderly people, low-income people, people on medications that interfere with the body's ability to regulate temperature. The shelter I've just described, placed in shade, would have meaningfully reduced the thermal load for every one of those people. Not necessarily saved all of them, hydration and calling for help matter too, but it would have bought time. And time is what kills you when you don't have enough of it. Now let me tell you who benefits from you not knowing any of this. The U.S. portable AC and evaporative cooler market does over $2 billion a year. Midea, Honeywell, Hessair. Real companies with real marketing budgets and real shelf space at every big box store. Not one of them has a financial incentive to run an ad that says a dollar store emergency blanket does 60% of what their $300 product does. Not because it's a lie, because there is nobody to pay for that ad. No one profits from the cheap version working. So it doesn't get advertised. HUD's Emergency Solutions Grant Program distributes about $290 million a year to emergency shelters. Average government reimbursement to a shelter provider runs $30 to $60 per person per night. A $20 shelter that keeps someone alive outside does not generate a billing. The system doesn't reward it. The system rewards the formal bed. And then there's the legal layer we started with. Grants Pass versus Johnson, June 2024, 6-3. The ordinances that triggered that case prohibited camping with bedding, sleeping bags, or, I'm quoting the city code directly, other material used for bedding purposes. First offense, $295 fine. Third offense, criminal trespass up to 30 days in jail, up to $250 fine. The Supreme Court of the United States looked at that and said, constitutional. So a city can take this shelter from a person who has nowhere else to go and charge them with a crime. Nobody sat in a room and decided to keep this information from you. They just all get paid when you don't know about it, and nothing when you do. Safe parking programs exist. Safe Parking LA, run by Path, operates designated lots with portable toilets and case manager access. Eugene, Oregon has a program called Lots of Hope. Santa Barbara has had one running since 2004. But Los Angeles shelters have beds for about 22,000 people. The city's own count puts the unhoused population above 75,000. That's one bed for every 3.4 people, before the sobriety requirements, the curfews, the no pets rules, the couples who get separated, the ID requirements. Vehicle dwellers cannot bring their vehicles inside. Losing the vehicle often means losing transportation, storage, and sometimes the job that depends on both. This shelter is not a replacement for a real solution. It's what exists between where people are and where the system pretends they can go. Let me stop here and be as serious as I know how to be. Do not seal this shelter. Do not close every gap and wrap yourself up tight in the belief that you're locking the cool in. You are locking yourself in with your own exhaled carbon dioxide. At rest, an adult exhales about 200 milliliters of CO2 per minute. In a small, sealed space, dangerous levels can build within 30 to 60 minutes. Headache and confusion come first, then impaired judgment, then worse. Minimum ventilation means a 2-inch perimeter gap at the base and a screened opening at the peak. Both, always, not negotiable. I am not going to be the man who gets you hurt to win a click. No combustion inside or near this shelter. No camp stove, no candle, no cigarette near the Mylar. Mylar ignites, foam melts and burns, and any combustion in an enclosed space produces carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless. At 200 parts per million, a healthy adult loses function in about 2 hours. The CDC documents roughly 400 Americans a year dying from non-fire CO poisoning. Most of them never detected a thing. This is a heat season structure. There is nothing inside it that requires fire. Hydration is not optional, and this shelter does not replace it. Above 100 degrees ambient, your body needs roughly half a liter of water per hour at rest in a cooled space. More if you're moving at all. Dehydration and heat combine faster than either one alone. The shelter reduces the load. It does not substitute for water. Know the signs: heat exhaustion, heavy sweating, weakness, cold or pale skin, fast weak pulse, nausea. Move to shade. Cool down immediately. Drink. Heat stroke is different. Confusion, no sweating, hot dry red skin, rapid strong pulse, possible unconsciousness. That is a medical emergency. Call 911. Do not wait to see if it passes. Core temperature above 104 degrees is where brain damage begins. Ice packs to the neck, armpits, and groin while you wait for help. Above 105 degrees ambient, know where your nearest cooling center is. Most cities open them during heat emergencies. 21.org has a locator. Use it before you need it. Now let me cover the mistakes I see described in other places that will hurt you. The most common: using a dark-colored tarp for the outer layer. Blue tarps, green tarps, the ones hanging at the end of every hardware store aisle. A dark blue tarp in direct sun hits surface temperatures above 150 degrees. You have built an oven. Any outer layer that is not silver, white, or aluminized will underperform at best and actively work against you at worst. White tarp is acceptable. Solar reflectance around 60%. Aluminized runs 90 to 97. There is no workaround for this. The outer surface has one job: reflect radiation before it enters. Dark colors do the exact opposite. The second mistake: using kitchen aluminum foil in place of emergency Mylar blankets. I understand the appeal. Foil is cheap, you have it, and it looks similar. What you do not have is structural integrity. Kitchen foil tears under any stress. It crinkles the moment you try to work with it, and a crinkled reflective surface scatters light in all directions instead of reflecting it cleanly back. You lose most of the benefit immediately. Emergency Mylar blankets are vapor-deposited aluminum on polyester film. They survive handling, wind, and use. If foil is all you have, lay it as flat as you possibly can. Do not crinkle it and expect it to fail. It is a last resort, not a plan. I know what some of you are thinking right now. First question: does this actually work, or is this just foil over sticks? The physics is real, and the lineage is documented. The same vapor-deposited aluminum technology was developed by NASA in 1964 at Marshall Space Flight Center for spacecraft thermal protection. It protected multi-billion-dollar hardware from the extreme temperature swings of orbit, hundreds of degrees of differential with no atmosphere to buffer any of it. The same vapor deposition process, the same aluminum on polyester substrate, is what an emergency blanket is made from. A 4-pack costs $8. The gap between what the technology is worth and what it costs you is the entire point of this video. Second question: what about being seen? A Mylar shelter reflects light visibly. In an urban area, it catches attention from a distance. Fair concern. You position it in shade, behind a visual barrier, wherever you can find one. And the effectiveness holds in partial shade. Diffuse radiation load is significantly lower than direct sun. But I'm also going to be straight with you. On a 105-degree afternoon, visible beats dead. You choose the one that keeps you functional. Third, some people will say this gives false confidence and gets someone killed. Here is my honest answer. People die in heat waves because they don't have water and they don't recognize the signs in time. The The shelter reduces your heat load by 15 to 35 degrees. It buys time. It is not invincibility. We just covered every single thing that will actually kill you. CO2 in a sealed space, dehydration, ignoring heat stroke signs until it's too late. That is where the danger lives. The shelter itself, built correctly with ventilation, is not the risk. The risk is thinking the shelter means you can skip the water. Now, here is the piece I told you to stay for. Inside this shelter, on a 105-degree afternoon, cold water is what keeps you alive. And there's an $8 trick the United Nations has been teaching in Nigeria for 20 years. 2 clay pots, unglazed terracotta, one smaller nested inside the larger. Wet sand packed between them. As water evaporates through the porous outer wall, it draws heat out of the inner chamber. The inner pot stays cold. In dry climates, the documented performance is 20 degrees cooler than ambient air temperature inside that inner pot. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization documented this device starting in the 1990s. A teacher named Muhammad Ba Abba spent years distributing it to rural communities in northern Nigeria for food preservation. Vegetables that spoiled in 2 days lasted 3 weeks inside the Zir pot. He won the Rolex Award for Enterprise. The FAO backed the numbers. This is not folk medicine. The mechanism is evaporative cooling. Same physics as sweating, same physics as the wet cloth over your shelter inlet. 2 terracotta pots from a garden center or Home Depot run $4 to $10 total. Sand is free. Water is free. Humidity needs to be below about 60% for it to function as a cooler. In humid climates, it still acts as thermal mass, a cooler without ice, keeping things from warming as fast. But in Phoenix, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, anywhere the air runs dry, that is a legitimate cold water source inside a $20 shelter. That combination keeps a person functional when nothing else out there will. So here's how I'd put it together. From first light to setup complete. Dollar Tree, grab 4 emergency blankets and a roll of zip ties and duct tape. That's $4. Paracord, $3. Closed cell foam pad from Walmart, $8 if you can manage it. Cardboard from any loading dock, free. Mylar goes on the outside, silver facing the sun. Cardboard ribs hold a 1 to 2 inch gap between the mylar and the inside. Foam pad flat on the ground, 2-inch base gap all the way around. Any piece of scrap screen or loosely tied cloth at the peak for the exit vent, wet rag over the base inlet if you're somewhere dry. Done. Total cost, $20 or less if you use cardboard on the ground. Add the 2 terracotta pots and wet sand and you're at $28 with a cold water source inside. That beats a $150 device that requires power you don't have. If you want the full breakdown, water ratios by body weight and heat level, the cold weather version of this same system, and what to carry so the build comes together in under 20 minutes. That's all in Chapter 3 of the Street Systems Manual. Links in the description. The 2021 heat dome killed more than 900 people across the Pacific Northwest in a single week. Most of them in houses, most of them alone. Some of them could have been reached by a shelter that costs less than a tank of gas. What's the cheapest thing that ever got you through a bad night in the heat? If you ever improvised something that worked, a trick, a spot, a material nobody told you about, drop it in the comments. I read every one of them. Stay cool, stay sharp, and remember, the people the world walks past know things the rest of us forgot.